Did you know Steve Jobs did not do what is called market research when he started Apple? Can you believe that? And market research, when I say that term, if you're not familiar with it, it is when someone wants to start a business or they want to create a product or something. They go out and, for the most part, talk to lots of people, lots of different ages, lots of different geographical areas to find out if that product or business is going to be something people want. Well, guess what? Steve Jobs didn't do that. And spoiler alert, and I'm sure you already know this, God didn't do it either. He did not come into the world and say, oh, okay, well, Adam and Eve, you goofed up. Now, let's get into the Old Testament and let me do some quote-unquote market research and let me find out what the people want that would help them have a relationship with me. He didn't do that. He didn't do that at all because he's God and he knows everything and he created us. And he knew exactly what it was going to take to bring us back into relationship with him. That doesn't mean that we don't have a say or we don't have an active part to play in this, but it does mean that he's the one that set everything in motion. And if he set everything in motion, again, that verse that we talk about quite often on this channel is he set everything into motion before the foundations of time. He knew you, he knew who was creating you, and he knew exactly what you were going to look like and who your parents were going to be. And he knew that you were going to fall in the second grade and you were going to break your arm. He already knew that. So it's not like he needed to come in and say, okay, how do we need to do this? What would be the best approach? Now, yes, I'm being a little bit, a little smidge of sarcasm here, but not in a mean way, okay? Not at all. One of Steve Jobs' famous quotes is, "People don't know what they want until you show them," which is unbelievably against what most businesses and most creators and companies and blah, blah, blah think and believe. And this is actually what was one of the things that made Steve Jobs so different in the way he approached business and he approached creativity. And he was incredibly creative. And no, this is not a Steve Jobs video, but there's a comparison here that I want to share with you because Steve Jobs could have easily, looked at this and gone, well, maybe I can't do this. Maybe this isn't a good idea. Maybe I just need to see what people want and just give them the thing that's like everything else. Well, they're creating computers, so I'll just make a computer kind of like everybody else's. And he didn't do that. And he went out on a limb and he created a product that has a cult following. And I don't mean cult like in a negative spiritual religious manner. You know that I mean it as in there are lots and lots of people that like Apple products, myself being one of them. And no, this isn't an Apple commercial either. I know I'm just doing too much Steve Jobs and Apple stuff, but I promise you there's a comparison here. This is the thing that is it blows me away. Because Steve Jobs did not want to create what was already created, because that wasn't really creating, it was just replicating. And guess what? God doesn't want to replicate. He doesn't want you to replicate. He wants you to create. And part of that creativity and part of the push and pull and struggle is once you get started, once you figure out, oh, I could create instead of replicate, you get pushback. And that pushback starts in your head. And it says, you can't do that. Nobody does that. That's not right. You don't know what you're doing. That's not good enough. Nobody's going to want that. And I can give you a list a mile long. Actually, I could probably give you a list from here to the moon, because those thoughts are prevalent and can be constant when you're working towards something that God has said, look, can you see it? I'm doing something new. If you've seen any of the Steve Jobs movies or you've read the book, you know that his engineer that he started with was Wozniak. And I think engineer is the right term. I'm not sure on that. But Wozniak and then pretty much everyone else, to some degree, that he had started working with, always wanted to stay inside the box. They wanted to replicate, or they wanted to do just one up, one different, just kind of a slightly different twist on something that was already done. And Jobs was always, and he was not, I will never say that he was a kind man, or he definitely does not appear to have been a believer. But he knew that what he wanted and what he wanted created was unique and different, and not something that had ever been before. Well, let's think about that a minute. God, he created everything. And I mean, he created everything before he created us. We have only the privilege of knowing his creation from the point that he created us. He created our universe. He created where we live. He created the stars, the sun, the moon, all of these things, and all of these other universes within and beside what we can actually see with telescopes, and what NASA and all of our research scientists and everything who look at the sky and the stars and all of that can actually see. That's all that we know that he created. Come on. Can we really say that that's it? That this infinite God would only create this little slice of world and universe that we live in? I don't think we can honestly say we're all there is. I think we can honestly say this is all God has shown us, and that's perfectly fine. It is more than enough. But at the same time, you know, Steve Jobs didn't want to create what was already there. He wanted something new, something different, and he had a vision. He was driven by vision of something different, something people didn't know they needed or wanted. And isn't that what God has done? He has piqued our interest and our curiosity. And he's called us to be creative, and he's called us to create new and different, something that hasn't been created before. And that creativity and creation, of course, is with him. We are co-heirs with Christ, and we can co-create with God, as in it's God's idea. He shares it with us, and then he has provided tools and materials and things to help us in that creative process. If we set everything aside, I mean, let me be a little more specific. If we set everything aside in our life, as in making money, going to a job, going to church, having children, having relationships, if we set everything aside just for a minute, and we focus on the fact that we're created in God's image, and part of God's image, only one portion of his image, but it's a large portion, or his character, I should say, is creativity and to create. And if we just focus on that just for a minute, that we've been created in his image to create, not replicate, but create, then we have to stop and think, oh my goodness, am I creating? Am I listening? And am I creating? And that creativity lends itself to, am I creating in my job? Am I creating in my hobby? Am I creating in my relationships? Because everything starts with a thought. Everything starts with creativity. I mean, okay, so think about it. You get up in the morning and you need to get dressed. Well, you're not creating the clothes that you put on, or maybe you did sew them and create them. I don't know, but most of us are not creating the clothes. But what we're creating is the ensemble. We're putting the clothes together to make them appear in style or fashionable or matching, at least, something like that, even maybe down to the socks, or not. Not matching socks is always cool. But what I'm saying is every single thing starts with this creative thought. Now, let's go back to the pulling the clothes out of the closet and the drawers just for a second. So you pull something out and it's not like everyone else's clothing. It's not like everyone else dresses. You decide you want to wear something that isn't unique. It's like everyone else's. So you're replicating a style or a trend, which is totally okay. But what happens if you decide not to replicate a trend or a style and you pull clothing out that is different and unique to you? And what is the first thing that may come into your head? Well, you can't wear that. Everybody's going to laugh at you. That's not normal. You can't. Why would you wear that? That's not going to work. That doesn't look good together. How many times have you changed clothes because you're thinking, oh this isn't going to work. This doesn't work for the office. This doesn't work for my job. My kids are going to be embarrassed. And immediately we go to this negative, don't do it. Fit in. Be a replication. Oh my goodness. Down to something as simple as putting your clothes on. Well, if it's that simple to find something different to wear and then get bombarded with negative thoughts, isn't this why we don't step out and create the new thing? Because, oh my gosh, that's not normal. People don't do that. People don't like that. It's not going to work. And God specifically says, do you not see it? I'm doing a new thing. And y'all, this is coming from like deep down in my soul, my gut, because I'm right there in the middle of this right now. And the pushback of nobody does that, nobody's going to like it, nobody wants it, that's stupid, well, you're not good enough, all of these negative thoughts. And you and I both know where they come from. And all of these negative thoughts, the minute that I'm going, okay, I can do this. And it's like, no, you can't. You can't paint. You can't draw. Nobody's going to like that picture. Oh my goodness. Do you resonate with this at all? Do you hear and sense that negativity coming through your brain? That's not from God. God's like, let's go. Let's do something fun. Let's create something new. Let's make a purple tree. Let's make an orange limb. And these are the things God says, come, dream with me. Let's do some new stuff because that's what I created you for. And we're like, but nobody else will like that, and that's not good. Well, those, as I said, those negative thoughts, those are not from God. They're either from your past, your upbringing, something someone said, or they're from the enemy. And do we really want to give him time or space in our head at all? Yeah, it's tough. I know it's tough. Let me walk you through the steps that I'm figuring out, that I kind of walk through, or I'm trying to figure out how to walk through when I'm in this creative process. And you can do this with any time you're creating, whether you're fixing dinner or you're putting clothes on or you've got a new idea to make something or give it to a boss or whatever. This is what happens when I have this initial, hey, this would be a really cool thing to make. So this is generally what the process or the steps or whatever looks like for me. And so I have this idea and I'm like, oh, that would be a great picture. That'd be a great thing to paint or draw or whatever. And immediately it's like, no, that's not going to work. That doesn't make sense. People aren't going to like that. Well, I can initially take those thoughts, and scripture says to take every thought captive, submitting it to the will of God. And that's a very loose translation, but I'll drop the link in for it. So that's what I do. I grab those negative thoughts. I'm like, nope, these are not from God. I can kick those to the curb. So nope, I'm not accepting those. Those are out of here. Well, then the next wave that is much more subtle in the negative thought process is, oh yeah, you could do that. But gosh, how are you going to even put that out or make it available for people to see it? Because, well, there's social media and there's YouTube and then there's your website and then there's your shop, because you could sell it there. But then if you do that, then you've got to go back and you've got to go back into the business stuff and figure out the taxes. And then you've got to go make sure that you have all the images correct, but then you don't know what your copy or your words are going to be. And I'm saying all of this jumbled because that's how it comes into my head, because this is another dump of negativity. Did you catch it? It's called overwhelm. And overwhelm is when you get the idea, but then there's all of this avalanche of stuff before you even put a pen or paintbrush to the canvas, or you even open the closet door. All of this overwhelm of yes, but, and comes in. It floods, it avalanches, and these are all very legitimate issues and things you have to deal with and problems, but you haven't even started creating yet, and you have this overwhelm. Okay, so let me give you the brain thought behind that, because yes, you're still going to take these thoughts captive, but here's what happens. When you get that overwhelm, that is the difference between your amygdala and your prefrontal cortex. Yeah, I'm getting all brainy here, but your amygdala is where all of your emotions pop up right there. And that's where most of us live. A lot of the time, we just live in those emotions. We swim in them. Well, overwhelm happens in your emotions. And to get out of overwhelm, you have to stop and make detailed lists or detailed thoughts of what it is that the emotions are attached to. So when those overwhelming thoughts of you don't know, well, you have to do this and it would have to be that and it'd have to be that, everything dumps at once, so you can't select which pieces of this you're going to look at. That's when you go into, when you want to get your brain, you want to start thinking in your prefrontal cortex. And that's the area that is not the emotion. It's just the facts. Let's get these things out of the brain onto paper so we'll know what we're looking at. That's how you demystify and get rid of the overwhelm. I'm not saying the overwhelm doesn't still freak you out, but what you do is you say, okay, all of those things, yes, I will address, because I do need to put it on social media. I need to put it on my YouTube channel. I need to put it here. I need to put it there. Well, you say, yes, I'm going to address those, but I'm not going to look at those until I have created this thing I'm creating. Then you go and you create and you play and you hang out with God and you create this really cool, awesome thing. And then you go back and you address and work through the prefrontal cortex, and you're like, okay, I need to figure out what it is about this that is really special. And you write all of those things down. Then you go back and go, okay, if this is what's special about it, then how do I say it? And then what is the best online place to put it? And I know I'm talking online and social media and all of that. It works for anything, because anytime you're in overwhelm, that overwhelm is emotional. And to get out of the overwhelm emotional, you go into the details. And guess what? God tells us to pray specifically. And when he's talking about praying specifically, he's saying, let's get down to the details so we can get you out of the emotional overwhelm amygdala and into the prefrontal cortex, which is the calm, writing things down so you can basically check everything off in your list as you get to it. In the beginning, God created a new thing, the heavens and the earth, and he created them in days, in stages. He didn't create the sky and then say, okay, now we're going to put birds in it. He created the foundation, which is sort of what I've done with this picture. And then he started adding smaller and smaller details until he got all the way down to the little fishes and the little critters and all of these things. And then he created us. And isn't that how we want to look at this? He did not, of course, have negative thoughts as we do with creating, but we don't have to have them. We can create the way He does in a systematic but exciting and challenging way, because He's the one that has given us the ability to create, because we are created in His image.